Okay, thank you very much, Jeremy. Good morning, everybody. So this presentation today is about the Martinique case study, and it's going to be a shared presentation between myself, Jean-Philippe, and Ewan. I will do the introduction and present some work we've been doing on the mapping, and Ewan is going to talk more about the link between ecological conditions and ecosystem services. So we're gonna go through these lines. I'm gonna present the Martinique Island, a short presentation, brief presentation, and remind the case study objectives and the methods and data we've been using for this case study. Then we're gonna go through the mapping and assessment of ecosystem conditions in this particular island with some preliminary results. And the same for the ecological conditions and ecosystem services relationship we can get from all these data. So Martinique is an island located in the Caribbean, Eastern Caribbean, in the Lesser Antilles archipelago. It's a high volcanic island with a volcano in the north of the island and a more flat area in the south. And it has a surface of about 1,000 square kilometers and a large marine zone in the region with a population of 376,000 people, so heavily populated, and with about 13% of land artificialization. Coastal development represents almost 18%. In the area of 500 meters of the sea. So the coastline is very well urbanized, but there are some concentration area. And if we go up to 5 kilometers of the coastline, it's about 8% of coastal development. And the agriculture area over the island is about a third of the surface of the island, with some specific culture that are important for the island, which are banana culture and sugarcane. And the total area for agriculture activity is about 24,000 hectares. We have, so in this case study, we focus on marine ecosystems. So in the past, we did marine habitat mapping of the total area up to 50 meters deep. So it's a coverage of all the coastal area of the island with different type of communities. So here you can see mangroves that are included in the marine ecosystems in our studies, but here we're going to talk only about the coral community, coral reefs, and we have so we have mapped down to 50 meters, and we have estimates of the surface of each of these communities, which is a very good baseline for our work on ecosystem services, marine ecosystem services, and so to remind the case study objectives, the aim of this work is to look at the impact of marine ecosystems condition and ecosystem services provision by developing indicators of ecological condition using different tools, habitat mapping, pressure distribution, ecosystem stages from monitoring data. We've been looking at ecosystem services assessment and weighting by these ecosystem conditions we get from the data, because the overall objective of this study is to develop more accurate methods to assess marine ecosystem services. And because most often the transfer value, the methods that are used or applied to territories usually overestimates the services value. So here we work on weighting service production function with ecosystem condition indices, which gives better estimates of these different services. The ecosystem services that we are looking at in this work, in this case study, is coastal protection, water purification, and biomass production. And the idea, but this is an ongoing work, it's not finished yet, is to develop an ecosystem services conceptual model approach that will integrate all these aspects of the work. So during this process, we've been working on a large amount of different database on water quality data, database data from the Water Framework Directive, database with land use cover, monitoring, coral reef monitoring database, different type of data on watersheds, on rivers, on sewage treatment. And this has been very useful to develop different type of maps. And here the objective was to, from this data on marine habitat information and different kind of information on pressure data, to correlate this information into a disturbance index, looking at scoring of different parameters and changes in communities through the analysis of monitoring time series. To do that, so we've been looking at different parameters like environmental data, land cover, sewage treatment, population, industrial activity, and marina that we have in the island. And we've been working with different indicators of these parameters that are available in all the database that I presented just before. And this is numeric data, so we can calculate different scoring from this data. Like for the environmental data, using the NIAD and the Water Framework Directive databases, we've been looking at the parameters for the Martinique Island, which is a database of 50,000 rows and 41 parameters for 31 monitoring stations. And in this database, we have access to specific compounds concentration and parameters measurements, and using the the WFD thresholds and literature and regional reports, we've been able to classify these different monitoring station using the very good condition to very bad condition classification in the Water Framework Directive orientations. With so looking at the condition of major and principal rivers water quality from one year to another, so looking at temporal changes in these rivers. We did the same with the land cover data, looking essentially at cover that would have a direct impact on the coastal marine ecosystem. So we've been using only the urban fabrics and the agriculture area changes over time, and working with surface area classes and data we can get from the satellite image analysis and the database. Sewage treatment is also an important point to consider when you're looking at the marine coastal environment condition. So we've been gathering a lot of data also on the treatment capacity and the conformity of the different sewage treatment plants we have along the coastline in Martinique at different period in the past until today. Also, we consider that population increase is also related to coastal environmental condition. So we've been looking at the changes in population over the different area and all over Martinique. But in this case today, we're going to focus on the south reef of the island. And for a lot of activities, we've been also able to collect some data on the quarry, distillery activity, marina, shipyards, gas station. So all these data together have been quite useful to address the question of marine ecosystem ecological condition along the coast. For this webinar, we just focus on this south portion of the island where there is a huge fringing coral reef that you can see on this satellite image that extends 20 kilometers long. And we've been in this region, we selected a few watersheds that are directly connected to the marine area. So we focused only on this area because we have also a lot of monitoring data. So here you can see that the major rivers, we have monitoring stations through the water framework monitoring. We also have with the yellow crosses long-term series monitoring of coral reefs, and we have all the information available for this data, for this area. So for instance, the environmental data have been analyzed over a 6 years period starting 2000. And we've been able to assess the quality of the major rivers and correlate this data on environmental quality to the changes in the coral reef communities, and essentially the coral cover and the macroalgae cover, which is the major interaction and temporal changes we see in the reefs in the Caribbean. We also did that on the land cover, so same type of work using this data, urban fabric and agriculture, and looking at changes in surface cover over time and correlates to the benthic community data along the coastline. We've been also working on these sewage treatment plants along the coastline because we have access to data on the fluxes and the capacity treatment. And also the population changes correlated to the urban fabric extension along the years, which has led us to scoring of the different watershed we're looking at along the time series. And so what we found out is in this particular case study, it's that we have environmental condition gradients from east to west with huge amount of pressure on the east, and this reduces when we go to the west of the island. And we found that using the monitoring data, this correlates very well with the changes in coral cover, as long as you go from the best site, which is on the left here, Caille d'Olbian, with high coral cover, like 50% coral cover, and very low algae cover in green. Black is the coral and green is the algae. As long as you move to a more degraded environment because of coastal land-based pressure on the marine environment, you see a decrease that is quite consistent along the years, with going from high coral cover to very low coral cover in this bay where there is this red watershed. So we go from 50% coral cover to about 10, 12 coral cover percent. I don't explain in details here all the data. You're going to find this in the final report, because there are also other events that happened during this period, like bleaching and hurricanes. But here we can we have the ability to correlate the environmental pressure with the changes in the communities, and that fits perfectly. So the important thing, I'm not going to detail this this slide, but the important thing that we still need to do is to look at the thresholds between to calculate thresholds between benthic habitat condition and level of pressure that apply to this. These ecosystems. So one important question we are looking at is the non-linear relationship between the ecosystem conditions and the pressures, and the question being, can we define specific thresholds? All right, so this was an introduction. Now I pass the talk to Ewan, that is going to present the connection between ecological conditions and ecosystem services. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Jean-Philippe. Can you please stop the sharing of the screen so I can,
yeah.
Thanks. Okay, you can see my presentation?
Yes.
Okay, great. Right. So now, what about the relationship between the ecological condition and ecosystem services provisioning? Well, often it's been assumed to be a linear relationship between the surface of an ecosystem and the provisioning of ecosystem services. But when an ecosystem is degrading, the amount of services decreases. So this is something that that we are looking for three services: coastal protection, nutrient uptake or water treatment, and fish biomass production. So about the coastal protection, here I'm gonna we explore the capacity of the reef to attenuate waves energy. So this is a pretty complex process when offshore waves hit the crest of the reef. We observed a small wave setup, an elevation of the water, and then the waves attenuates over the reef flat. Combining the work from Shepard and Ferrario, we were able to put an equation together to assess the total wave energy attenuation coefficient of the reef, considering the coral cover and the coral cover of the reef crest and the reef slope and the reef flat width. So based on those equations, we were able to model the wave energy attenuation coefficient against the coral cover, so in the abscisse from 0 to 100%, and looking at different reef flat widths from 25 meters to 800 meters. So you see it's not strictly linear relationships, and as a reef flat becomes is thinner, the importance of the ecological condition is higher to in the wave energy attenuation. Based on those models, we were able to assess the wave energy attenuation for the different study sites from Caye d'Olbian to Pointe Borgnesse. Caye d'Olbian, despite its great coral cover, has a wave energy attenuation which is lower than the other sites because of the reef flat width, which is much smaller than the other reef units. However, when we look at the unit value per kilometers, The value ranges from 325,000 euro for Quai d'Olbion to 345,000 euro for Cordegarde. So the difference is not that big because wave energy attenuation remains fairly close between 0.89 to about 0.96. Looking at the nutrients uptake for coral reef, they usually grows in very oligotrophic waters, but as Jean-Philippe mentioned, there are lots of nutrient inputs from the watersheds in Martinique. So these services becomes more important over the years. From a paper in 2016, Den Haan and his collaborators studied the nutrients uptake of different species from the coral reef communities in Curacao, so in the Caribbean, and they measured the nutrients uptake rates for one coral species, Madrassis mirabilis, which is very common in Martinique, and then they measure the rates for macroalgae like Lobophora variegata, Dictyota, and Alimeda, all very common in Martinique, as well as the turf algal mats and benthic cyanobacteria. So from their papers, we were able, looking at the areal density of benthic species and their maximum nutrients uptake rates. We look more particularly at the ammonium uptake, which is the main pathway of nitrogen absorption in a reef, and we assess the capacity of nutrients nitrogen removal in for the different sites in Martinique, and from this we can see already that Point Borgnès has a higher capacity to remove nitrogen than Quai d'Olbion, where the macroalgae cover is lower. From this amount of nitrogen absorbed at the scale of the site, we could easily value the monetary value of these services, which follow the same trends. However, we should be careful interpreting these results because they measure nutrients uptake rates for high nutrient concentration, and it's not the same every day over the year, so it's certainly an overestimation. However, for our purpose, it's not such a problem. The idea was to correlate the production function with ecological condition indicators. So by plotting all the sites together, plotting the nutrient uptake over the coral cover, over the macroalgae cover, turf cover, and the macroalgae plus turf, so the total algal cover, we observed a very good fit between the amount of nutrients uptake and the total algal cover. So the best indicator to adjust these services would be to consider the total algal cover. Looking at fish biomass now, we explored the biomass of trophic groups, so more particularly herbivorous fishes, so typically parrotfish and surgeonfish. And also we pull together piscivorous and carnivorous fishes. So they are basically in Martinique the top predators on the reefs in the absence of sharks, reef sharks. So here the great barracuda, groupers, snappers, etc. And we also looked at the total biomass, so all the trophic groups put together. So from the monitoring survey, we were able to assess the biomass for the different trophic groups and the total biomass for the different sites. Here we have only Quai d'Olbion, Jardin Tropical, and Point Borgnès, the IFRECOR sites. We can see that Quai d'Olbion has a much higher total biomass than the other sites. And but very interesting is the biomass of herbivorous fishes on Quai d'Olbion, which is very low compared to Jardin Tropical or Point Borgnès. I will come back to this point later. Looking at the value at the scale of the sampling sites, where it ranged from 164 euro for Point Borgnès to about 400 euros at Caille-d'Olbion. If we extrapolate at the scale of Martinique's coral reef, which is 55 square kilometers, where the value ranged from 30 million euro per year to 72 million euros. So the degradation of reef could have a substantial economic impact on the value of coral reef. Now, what's interesting for us is the relationship between the ecological coral reef indicators and fish indicators. So we, again, by plotting, putting all the sites together, we also added Corps de Garde, Rocher du Diamant and Grande Caille that were sampled once in 2013. There were also some other samples in 2007 and 2008, but that were not took into account for this presentation. However, we can see clearly a trend when we plot against the algal cover. Herbivorous biomass increases while the piscivorous and carnivorous biomass decreases. If we plot this the biomass of piscivorous against coral cover, we see that the fit is a bit lower. But if we look at the total biomass, the best indicator remain the coral cover with a coefficient of determination of 0.4. So although the coefficient of determination are quite low due to the high variability of fish populations, we can still see a clear trend between the two extreme sites, from Caille-d'Olbion to which is the best site, very good condition, and Point Borgnès, which is very degraded today. So yeah, clear trends between the two sites, and if we wanted to adjust the fish biomass services, the best way would be to look at the coral cover. To sum up a little bit the fish biomass, so as I said, the high natural variability makes it difficult to link the coral reef condition with fish assemblages. One interesting point is the presence of herbivorous fishes isn't necessarily a sign of a healthy reef. For instance, in the Reef Health Index, the more herbivorous fishes, the better, but it's actually not true, at least in Martinique, where we have a high biomass of herbivorous fishes in very degraded reefs, while they are almost absent in very good in coral reef in very good condition. Now, Jean-Philippe talked a lot about land-based pressure, but there is also natural disturbances, and like he mentioned, the cyclone Dean in 2007 substantially altered the benthic and fish community on Jardin Tropical. These events open a new ecological niche for opportunistic and territorial species like this danzelfish. It's about 5 centimeters long, but it's a very kind of a nasty fish, which chase every fish that goes in his territory. So it prevents the return of the common fish on this site. Also, since 2011, the lionfish, the invasive species, arrived in Martinique, and this fish can have a huge impact on the fish assemblages as well. This is something that we have studied in the past with Jean-Philippe on artificial reefs, and looking in particular at the biological traits of fishes. So the next step would be, I think, to compare benthic and fish functional biodiversity indices to have a different view of the reef community, looking at the structure of the different species of corals and the behaviors of different fish species. So yeah, that will be for the next project in Move On, and so on. Thank you for your attention.